Good afternoon, everybody. This is Don again. It is time for episode 25 of Practical Reality. It's a Saturday afternoon, approximately 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It is maybe 63 degrees out. The weather is unusually cool for Memorial Day weekend, I'll say that much. I think that explains why the park is so quiet. If it was 10 degrees warmer, you'd have a lot more people here and a lot more noise. So I still get to sit in my favorite spot here right next to the Raritan River, which is actually quite a bit down today. Yesterday we were here and it was much higher, running much higher. I don't know if rivers have tides. Maybe that's what it is. The tide is out or something like that. Where I'm sitting right now, the river is much lower than it was 24 hours ago. So today is Saturday. 3 days ago, I actually turned 64 years old. And my wife bought me a few new shirts and took me out to lunch, that kind of stuff. It was a very nice sort of quiet day. We actually didn't go to lunch until yesterday because she's working, but she had off yesterday and we went to lunch together at this nice local Chinese place, some really good food. We enjoyed ourselves. Turning 64 makes a man sort of reflective, and I have to say probably one of the better birthday presents that I got besides what my wife gave me was my latest PSA test, which came in at 0.8, which is fabulous, which means I am cancer-free, which means I've officially beat it. And I think that's important to understand, especially for the theme of this video, which is going to be tests. And I've made a video recently about challenges, and I want to quickly explain the difference between what a challenge is and what a test is. A challenge usually means something you have to get done, a task, something you're facing, some goal that you're setting for yourself. To me, that's what a challenge means. A test, is something you have to endure, something you have to go through. It may be a challenge to overcome the test or to take the test, but it doesn't necessarily involve a goal or a task that you have to do. The test is just something you have to endure and get through. And this is what I want to talk about today in this video. And as far as I'm concerned, there are three kinds of tests. There are tests of the mind, there are tests of the heart, and there are tests of the soul. I'm going to talk about what the difference is between the three. And I think I'm going to start out talking to you about tests of the heart first, because I think they're the easiest to explain. I think a test of the heart is also the easiest to identify with because everybody has or is searching for love in their life. And sometimes love can present tests. And we discuss this a lot in the men's team that I am part of. In our weekly discussion, we talk about what tests we have faced with our partners this week. And some of them are severe and some of them are not. And they actually, differentiating between the two can often be difficult. Some of them feel severe even when they're not. Many times, tests, when you look back at them, often turned out to be not as big a problem as you thought they were going to be. But a test of the heart means, what are you doing for love? What kind of tests does your partner put you through? How do you face them? How do you deal with them? Now, I know that I have spoken about this before, and I have said that the book, Way of the Superior Man by David Deida, talks about being the rock in the stream. As a superior man, you are the rock in the stream and everything flows around you. And once I discovered that, once I read that, it brought me into a greater perspective, a greater understanding of exactly what it means to have someone who loves you, but who tests you. And as he pointed out, which becomes abundantly clear once you realize it, the woman that you love is testing you constantly, even if she doesn't realize it. Most of the time, she doesn't realize it. Or maybe she does, and it's probably worse if she does, if you ask me. But most of the time, I think that she doesn't realize it. She's just being herself and expecting you to understand and, I don't want to say put up with, or endure, but sort of like make it through with her. She's expecting you to respect her boundaries and to be the kind of man that she expects you to be. Now, sometimes the kind of man that you are is not the kind of man that she expects you to be. And there's where the dissonance lies. And that's where the test comes in. So sometimes you have to be a man, even though you were not expecting to have to be this kind of man for her. And that can be a test. And being that rock in the stream, that all the water just flows around and you stay right where you are, that's not that easy to do. But it's still worth it. This is the whole point. What happens when you endure that test and when the test is over? She has a newfound respect for you, or even if it's not newfound, she has her respect for you. She has that love for you. It endures. And that's worth it. Because why are you with her in the first place? Hopefully, it's because you love her. And if you do love her and you go through that test, then the love lasts and the love endures. And that's extremely important. Because really nothing, the one thing I've come to realize at this point in my life, after turning 64 years old, or well before I turned 64 years old, but now that I have turned 64 years old, I realize it even more. Having someone who loves you sincerely, having someone who does things for you, is so important. Now, whether or not she would tell me that I have tested her, I'm not really sure. She may say yes. She may say I've put her through many tests. I really wouldn't know. So to see it from her perspective, I may actually be testing her at times. But all I can do is report to you from my perspective. And yes, it feels like she is testing me a lot. There are certain things that she does that annoy me. But do I really let it get to me? Do I really let it bother me for a long period of time? No. I simply go through it, I take some deep breaths, and I endure. And we last. And we are approaching, as a matter of fact, let's see, today is Saturday, and I believe today is the 24th of May. On Monday will be our 7th wedding anniversary, which to me is fabulous. I never, I shouldn't say I never expected it to last, but time flies so quickly. It's amazing how time flies by. And I have to say that the 7 years that we've had together have been mostly enjoyable. Most of the time, in the beginning, I would say there were definitely some much larger tests that tested whether our love was meant to be, but we passed those tests, and now we are at the point where we relish in each other. And I think that's wonderful. And now, of course, the tests I'm talking about don't only happen between a man and his wife, or a man and a woman. They happen with your children, this kind of thing. They happen with other people in your life that you care about. Those tests are there. How are you going to face them? How are you going to endure them? That's very, very important. The attitude that you take, the approach, the remembrance of what they mean to you, that's the bottom line. That's the basis right there. Remembering what people mean to you while you go through these tests is so important, because what would happen if you refused to face the test and not endure it and walk away? Then you lose something that's far more meaningful in your life than you ever realize. And nothing is worse, in my opinion, than having someone that you love walk away from you and never see them again. It hurts for a long time. There's no doubt about it. I've had this happen to me, and I'm sure many people, everybody, if you grow up and you are mature, part of becoming mature is facing those kind of tragedies, facing that kind of event in your life where you suddenly lose something that you held very dear. That is part of growing up, and that is the remembrance of, that is a lesson there. There's a lesson there that says, okay, maybe that love was worth working for, and maybe as you get older you'll realize that, and now you will not let those kind of events, those kind of tests drive you away. You will have more forbearance, you'll have more patience, you'll have more toughness. Yeah, you'll be that rock in the stream to be able to sit there while the water flows around you, trying to wear you away over time, but you won't let it happen to you anymore. And that's called maturity, and that's called making something real with someone you care about deeply. Now, obviously, too, as I said, children can put you through tests. Children, as they grow, are always testing you. It's part of their growing up. It's part of their becoming independent. It's part of the grand disillusionment that children go through when they no longer see you as the greatest person in the world. Oh, you're the most wonderful dad, this kind of thing. When the kids are 10, this kind of thing. When they get to be 15, it's a whole different story. They're seeing you through much different eyes. The world has been open to them. And how are you going to face up to that test when they begin to separate themselves from you emotionally? That's a very different thing. That's a hard thing to understand as well. So that's the summary of what I consider tests of the heart. Next, I'm going to be talking about tests of the mind. I think it bears a little definition. Now, before I even continue with this, a test of the mind means the everyday stress that you go through, the little things that test your patience, test your tolerance. And before I continue on exactly what those tests are and how you deal with them, I want to remind you that every test that you face is a test of the control that you have of your internal environment. Remember, I've been saying this in many videos now. The internal environment is what you can control. That is what you have, what you feel, what you think. Those are what you can control. Most of the rest of the world, you can't control. So how you deal with your own internal environment is a test of your maturity and your control and your self-control and your discipline. So the tests of the mind are the little things that happen every day. The stress you feel at work, that feeling of having to hurry through everything, of being in fourth gear all the time. Those are tests of the mind. And how are you going to face those tests? You don't necessarily have to get anything done. You just have to endure those tests. You have to every day face those tests and be the person that you want to be. Face them in the best version of yourself that you can be. And sometimes that is not easy to do. Sometimes that's difficult. Sometimes it eats away at you. And you say to yourself, how am I going to ever do this? You're facing this test. You could call it a challenge in this case, because there is maybe a task to be done. But the point of the matter is, how are you going to face that test, that little stress? That's the test right there. How are you going to face that stress that you face every single day when you see people not being genuine with you, not being honest? You know, you see it all the time. People trying to take advantage of you. You know, people who are testing your own sort of perception of your own self-worth. Okay, those are tests. They don't necessarily require tasks. That's not necessarily a challenge, but those are tests that you face. Maybe there are tests that require you to do something, and it's very difficult for you to do. That's part of the same type of test of the mind. Don't lose your focus. Remember who you are. Remember what you are worth to yourself. Your own personal opinion of yourself is what matters here. What are you doing for yourself? Okay, are you letting these people control your internal environment, or are you acting on your own internal environment and regulating it to the best version of yourself, to maintain the best self you can be, to maintain your mental health? That's what's important. Those are tests of the mind, that everyday stuff that you see that is difficult to deal with because people are constantly trying to get something over on you, or they think they have the right to push you around or bully you or make you feel less than you are. And remember, the only reason they're making you trying to make you feel less than you are is because they feel less than what they are. They have that inadequacy within themselves that they cannot deal with. So they lash out at you and other people to make themselves feel better about their own inadequacy. And then maybe that calls for pity on them, but that might be a very hard feeling to summon within yourself when you see the way they're acting towards you and others. It might be very difficult for you to have any sort of pity for them, but that really is what they are, what they're doing, and the reason they're doing it, because they feel small inside. They have realized something about themselves that bothers them, and they cannot let go. And if they had control of their internal environment, they wouldn't have to do this to other people, but they don't. So it's up to you to maintain the control of your internal environment and face that test like a mature person as much as you can, as often as you can. Now, are you going to pass that test every single time? The answer is no. Everyone knows this. But there is that sort of get knocked down and rebound type of situation where, yes, you're going to get knocked down, you're going to feel like crap for a little while, but how long are you going to let that last? Sometimes the test overwhelms you and you can't. You have to just sort of lay down and relax and not let it just flow through you. Let it course over you. Process it. That's what sometimes happens. And that to me means that you are conscious. If you can be conscious and process it properly and not let it overtake you for the next few days, and then process it through, and then lay down or sit down and work on it, and then after a certain period of time passes, maybe a couple of hours or something like that, you can get off your couch or you're off your chair or out of your car and say, okay, that's the end of it. You're done with it now. And you come back to that state of stasis where you are now back in control of your internal environment. And you realize you are not going to let that person make you feel like that ever again. Those are tests of the mind. Now, the last tests that I want to discuss are what I would call tests of the soul. Now, something very important has to be stated first. You can only undergo tests of the soul if you realize that you have a soul, if you work on developing your soul on a regular basis. And what does that mean, development of the soul? It's sort of like empathy. It's sort of like understanding that the world doesn't revolve around you. Developing a mature mindset means that you recognize your own place within the world, and you recognize the fact that you as a person, you as a conscious being, can make a difference in the world. However, and that's when you face tests, when you want to make a difference in the world and yet you see all this pain and suffering out there that you necessarily can't do anything about, and you can't torture yourself over it, but it's still a test of your soul. It's still something you realize that happens to others or maybe to yourself, and you can't do anything about it. And what happens then? You cannot lie around just thinking about it and letting it bother you day after day after day. Some people are able to get up and make a real difference in the world. They start nonprofit organizations. They start movements in their own neighborhood. Who knows what they do. There are many people out there who act upon these things. And maybe what I'm doing right now is not a test of my soul, but helping other people face a test of their soul. That's probably deeply psychologically one of the reasons why I have this channel, is because there are people out there who face tests of the soul because they are conscious beings and they recognize their soul as part of their being, and they recognize the development of their soul as part of their growing and part of their maturity. And they see what happens to others and they detest it and they want to do something about it. And maybe they have some dissonance over the fact that they can't. And yet, when you have a soul and you see what's the bad things that are happening to people out there, and if you're able to do something about it, you can make yourself feel much better. But the important point is this: you have that soul, you are a conscious being, you recognize what's going on in the world, you try to help people in any way you can. That's what I'm doing on this channel, on this YouTube channel. I'm trying to help people understand the world and control their own internal environment to make themselves more peaceful, to give themselves more inner peace. Because inner peace and peace of mind are probably the most valuable assets that you have. Now, people achieve peace of mind in their own way. I'm just prescribing one way that might help you. And the soul is a very, very important part of you if you want to recognize it. As a matter of fact, I would consider the soul to be the most important part of me. And it's probably the reason why that I am able to sit here today with the sun shining on my face next to this river, feeling good about myself and able to tell people, don't lose your focus. Stay in touch with your own internal environment and recognize that the only way that you can do any good for anyone in the world is if you are first in control of yourself. And if you do want to help others and you feel the necessity to get out there and do it, then you have a soul and it's developed and you are a mature person and a conscious being, and you should congratulate yourself for that and feel great about it. And then recognize the fact that yes, using that strength, you will be able to do something and help others in any small way possible. It doesn't have to be world changing. You can change one person's life and you have done something that's remarkable and leaves you a legacy that you can be proud of. And I hope everyone understands this and understands these tests as for what they are. They are things to be endured. They are things that can be passed, and they are things you can be proud of, that once you have passed them, you can now say, yes, I have gained this inner strength, and I am a person who can hold their head up high and be proud of themselves and say, yes, I've done this, I've been there, I've overcome, and I am not going to let people take me out of my own inner orbit, make me question my self-worth from now on. I hope everyone has enjoyed this video. It's one of my longer videos, and I didn't even need a script. I sat here and just let it lay out in 3 segments. Beautiful. I hope everyone has a great day. And as a matter of fact, I will probably be back tomorrow to do another video because I didn't get to do one for a couple of weeks. So I want to catch up. I hope everyone has a great day, enjoys themselves, and wherever you are, I wish you peace, happiness, and prosperity.